For an astronaut, stepping outside the safety of the spacecraft is the ultimate test of skill and nerve. Spacewalks, or EVAs, extravehicular activities, are critical for repairing satellites, maintaining the International Space Station, and even preparing for future missions beyond Earth. But what if something goes horribly wrong? What if, with just one mistake, an astronaut finds themselves adrift in the endless void of space with no way back? One such terrifying incident occurred in 2008 when astronaut Daniel Harrington embarked on what should have been a routine maintenance EVA outside the ISS. The procedure was carefully planned and every movement rehearsed down to the last detail. But in the silence of space, things can unravel in an instant. As Daniel adjusted a faulty panel on the station's exterior, an unnoticed glitch in his safety tether occurred. A microscopic tear had formed in the cord securing him to the ISS. One sharp motion, and the cord snapped. Suddenly, Daniel was no longer attached to the station. He was floating away. At first, he didn't panic. His training kicked in, and he reached for his jetpack. NASA's safer, simplified aid for EVA rescue system, designed for just such emergencies. But as he activated it, a horrifying realization dawned on him. The thrusters were malfunctioning. His worst nightmare was becoming reality. He was drifting further and further away from the station, the Earth growing smaller beneath him. Mission Control in Houston immediately took action. A second astronaut on the spacewalk, Commander Lisa Carter, attempted to reach Daniel with a robotic arm, but he was already too far. The ISS crew had only minutes to come up with a solution before he drifted beyond the point of no return. Meanwhile, Daniel's oxygen levels were rapidly depleting. He could feel his breathing becoming more labored as carbon dioxide levels inside his helmet increased. Dizziness and disorientation began to set in. Then, a last-ditch maneuver was proposed. If Daniel could reorient himself using his arms and legs in microgravity, he might be able to slow his drift long enough for Lisa to launch herself towards him using her own safer unit. It was a risky move, one miscalculation, and they could both end up lost in space. But with no other option, she launched herself into the void. Back on Earth, millions of people were unaware that a life-or-death struggle was unfolding 400 kilometers above them. The tension in Mission Control was unbearable. As Lisa propelled herself toward Daniel, she reached out, stretching her arm as far as she could. Their gloves barely brushed against each other. Then, in a miraculous moment, she caught his wrist. Using the last of her safer fuel, she guided them both back towards the station, where the other astronauts frantically secured them to the airlock. As Daniel re-entered the ISS, he collapsed from exhaustion. His oxygen was nearly depleted and his body was trembling, but he was alive. The entire ordeal had lasted just 13 minutes, but to him, it felt like an eternity. After the incident, NASA reviewed every detail of the spacewalk, refining their safety protocols and training to prevent such a near disaster from happening again. But the truth remains. Spacewalks are among the most dangerous tasks an astronaut can perform. A single error, a single failure, can mean the difference between life and an eternity lost in space. Daniel Harrington never went on another spacewalk after that mission. Years later, he recounted the experience, describing how he still wakes up at night with the sensation of floating, the vast nothingness swallowing him whole. In space, there's no up, no down, only the silence. And in that silence, you realize just how alone you truly are. So next time you see an astronaut gracefully working outside the ISS, remember, behind that breathtaking view is the ever-present fear of the abyss. The fear that one wrong move could turn a routine mission into a desperate fight for survival.